What's up, everybody? It's Bucky Brooks, your favorite Jaguar, and this is Bleav in Jaguars, podcast dedicated to our Jacksonville Jaguars and everything that's going on with your favorite football team. Today it's a Wednesday. We've reached the middle of the week. It's Indianapolis Colts week, so we've turned the page on the performance on Sunday against the Houston Texans. We've broken it down, we've looked at it, and now it's time to kind of spin it forward and to begin to get ready for what's going to be a great game, a great weekend. It's Legends Weekend. All the old school Jags are coming back. Our old coach, Tom Coughlin, is going in the Pride. So he's going to have his name emblazoned at the top of the stadium, which is going to be really cool to see my old guy, Coach Coughlin, talk about it and do his thing and be recognized for the great things that he did with the franchise. And we hope to finally see the Jaguars play a great game on Sunday. And so we'll preview the game and talk about Coach Coughlin and some of that stuff on Friday. Today, I want to kind of pick up where we left off the last time, where we did a little bit of a State of the Union. I just kind of want to talk about picking up the pieces from an 0-4 start and how this team can kind of reverse course, get back on track, and put themselves in a position where at the end of the season, we're talking about making a run to get into the postseason, even though you're talking about an 0-4 start. But before we do that, let's pay off our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the game. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of the $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. The Jaguars, 3-point favorites against the Colts this week. So head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. That's right, man. Make sure you get in on the action. Jaguars going to get back on track with a win against the Indianapolis Colts. That could start some positive momentum. We'll talk about that later in the week. But today, what I want to talk about is where the Jags are, how they can pick up the pieces, and just have an honest conversation about the Jags and what they can do, really, if we're being positive and optimistic, to get this team back on track. I think it's really important. Every NFL coach that I ever played for, every NFL coach that I work for, it's funny because they had these realistic views on how to treat the season. A lot of times you hear coaches talk about the season being a marathon, not a sprint. And because it's so long that you want to break it up. Most teams, most coaches break the season up into quarters. They break it up into quarters because they want to give their guys a realistic view of what's ahead of them. Don't want them to look too far out in the horizon, but hey, here's what's on our plate. Here's what we have over the course of the month. Here's what we want to do over the month to help put ourselves in a position to get into the tournament. Contrary to popular belief, every coach doesn't talk about the Super Bowl each and every day. They don't talk about it every week about going to the Super Bowl. They talk about, let's get to the tournament. And once we get into the tournament, anybody can win the Super Bowl. So the number one thing that you want to do is, how can we get into the postseason? Most teams will say, hey, you win your division, we take care of business. That gives us a lottery ticket where we're guaranteed admission to the tournament. Where the Jaguars are sitting, don't know if there's still a possibility. You still can talk about it. But in all honesty and reality, what you have to do is talk about the next quarter of the season. As we sit at the quarter pole, 0-4, ideally, you want to treat every quarter with a goal of going 3-1. If you go 3-1, that'll put you at 13-4 at the end of the regular season. That pretty much assures you being 1, 2, or 3 in the playoff seeding. You think about the teams that typically go to the Super Bowl, normally it's one of the teams at the top. That'll give you at least a home game the first round. It might get you a home game the second round, which increases your odds of being able to advance through the tournament. That's why it's really important. 3-1 each quarter, 13-4, that puts you right on track. Well, the Jags are 0-4, so they are off the pace. But the good thing is when you look at the calendar and the schedule, and as it breaks, you got an opportunity to make up some game if you can start playing well. You think about the Indianapolis Colts coming up this weekend. You have 2 games overseas in London where there's a bit of a home field advantage for the Jaguars when you talk about playing the New England Patriots and Chicago Bears, respectively. You feel good about those opportunities. And then you come back to the crib and you have an opportunity to take on a really good team and maybe the Green Bay Packers. But by that time, if you got a little roll going, man, you may feel like you may be able to get that. And that'll put you, lo and behold, right at 500, right in the middle of the race. But before you can get 3 in a row, you got to get 1. And so the most important one would be Indianapolis. Early part of the week when you were a team and you were a coaching staff, you look back at the game, you review everything that happened in the game previously. So they've broken on the tape. They looked at the game against the Texans. They've done a little what we call self-scout, where you look at the things that were good, the things that were bad, what are the areas that you need to improve. You look at that within the game. But also, once you reach 4 games, you now do an overall self-scout of your team to kind of figure out who you are, what's really good for this team, what doesn't really work with this team, all of those things. As much as we love the preseason and as much weight as we put in preseason, like in terms of what the preseason games look like, who's playing well, and those things, the reality is you don't really know your team until after about a month in the season. And the reason why is because regular season games are completely different than preseason games. And it's the first opportunity that you've had to play your guys 64 minutes. A lot of the things that you spent your time on in the offseason, concepts, personnel packages, ideas that you thought were going to be really good for your team, after the first 4 games of the season, you're like, yeah, I love this idea, but it doesn't work for the guys that we have. This team that we have is presently constructed. We got to figure out a way to play with this team to give this version of the Jaguars the best chance to win. Now, to do that, it requires you being honest in what you're assessing, honest in being able to talk about who you are and what you are, which players are playing well, which ones are not playing well, how much of the performance of the team is coaching related, how much is personnel driven, how much is it a scheme issue. When you're looking at your team, you have to evaluate all of those things so you can build a plan that allows you to address each of those areas and put the team in a position to start winning games despite whatever flaws it may have displayed during the first month of the season. When I look at this team, and I think it's really important to talk about the team not in a pie in the sky type deal in terms of like, hey, we're 0-4, but like 3 of those losses have been by 12 points, which is true. You have lost 3 of those games by like a total of 12 points. A lot of like 1-score losses are kind of hanging up on the schedule. But Bill Parcells says you are what your record says you are. And so we got to be honest with ourselves and say like, hey, even though we could have won those games, we maybe should have won those games, we didn't. We got to figure out why we didn't win those games. Let's break down the offensive part of some of the issues that we have and what's going on with the team. So like offensively, when we look at the team offensively, the team is only averaging 15 points per game. 15 points per game is not good enough in any stretch of the imagination to be able to get anything done. 15 points a game is not, I mean, it's at the bottom of the league when it comes to doing it. It's only one team that is averaging fewer points than that, and they're not a very, very good team at this point. And so we have to talk about that. Hey, there's something going on with our offense where we're not scoring enough points. It's not good enough. It hasn't been good enough this season. We have to figure out how we can fix it and how we solve it. Doug Peterson revealed that, look, he's not calling the plays. Press Taylor's calling the plays. And even though it's a collaborative effort, look, some of that falls on the feet of the offensive coaching staff as to why this team isn't playing well. Not playing well, not playing great, hasn't looked good, continues to be something that's really problematic for a team that really, let's be honest, the offensive struggles go back into last year, like back into the way this team finished. They couldn't score when you needed to get points done. And if you can't score, it's hard to win in this league. And the reason why the Jags can't score right now, I would say, not enough explosive plays. Explosive plays can come one of 2 ways. It can come through the air, bombs, big plays, deep shots where you just run past coverage or the ball flies over top of the coverage because their eyes are not in the right spot. Or it comes on catch and run concepts where your team is fast enough where they break tackles and they make things happen. What I would say is when I look at this team from a personnel standpoint, there's some guys that are gifted. Brian Thomas Jr. is gifted enough to be able to be a legitimate vertical threat. Gabe Davis has enough talent to be able to push it down the field and make some big plays happen. He's done it all his career. I haven't necessarily seen haven't seen Gabe Davis provide that pop that you wanted, but the other guys certainly have. I mean, BTJ has certainly been as advertised when it comes to his big play ability. In fact, I would say, man, they should probably give him the ball more, find a way to feed him when it comes to the pecking order. We can talk about that, and we will talk about that. Total yards per game, through 285 yards per game, not enough. You should always be over 300 yards per game. That's just what it is. Like, you need to be able to dominate the game offensively. This team is built to be an offensive-driven team as opposed to a defensive-driven team. And so we got to figure out a way to kind of make those things happen. So 285 yards per game, not enough. 159.3 passing yards per game. Not good enough. Hard to win games when it comes to that. Like, you're not moving the ball. You can't move it. You can't score it. You're not getting the explosive plays in the passing game. You average under 160 yards in that regard. But then it comes down to, let's talk about situational ball. Third down percentage on offense. Third down percentage right now, you're converting only 25% of your conversion opportunities. Fourth down, you're converting 40%, but that's 4 for 10. And normally when you go for it on fourth down, we're talking about short yardage situations where you should be able to get it. So we're talking about areas that were talked about last year as possible concerns, and it hasn't changed. The reason why that's an issue is because you've changed some of the personnel. You've had coaches do an extensive study on these situations, and yet you're still falling short in these things. And so I don't know if that's a coaching issue, if that's a player and a player execution issue, but I would say that it's not getting done. And a 25% conversion rate on third down is absolutely horrendous when you're a team that wants to possess the ball, keep the ball, and do things that allow you to play keep away from the opponent so you can preserve and protect your defense, which was supposed to be not the strength of your team, but a unit that play bend but don't break. They take the ball away, and they set you up for opportunities on timely turnovers and negative plays. The offense hasn't done its job because they haven't been able to, one, stay on the field. They haven't been able to put points on the board. They've given away the ball. I mean, I can't say too often, but they've been giving it away. They just haven't been able to dominate like we thought that this team would dominate. Now let's talk about it. Let's talk about the offense and where the struggles go. So whenever we think about the offense, and we've always talked about the offense in terms of the quarterback and how well the quarterback plays, and if the quarterback is playing well, everyone loves him. It's funny because after Trevor Lawrence got his deal, it seems like everyone is really looking and scrutinizing his game. I understand that. Big money quarterback, guy who is paid at the top of the charts. I think his money is equal to that of Joe Burrow. We've seen Joe Burrow lift his franchise to the Super Bowl. Some of those expectations that were heaped on Burrow now fall on Trevor Lawrence, particularly when he entered the league, viewed as, by some people, I don't know who said it, but some people said he's a generational talent. Well, when that comes into play, and that is the language that is talked about when the quarterback is picked, everyone in Jacksonville expects him to play like a generational talent. They expect him to be a guy that can lift the team on his shoulders and get it done. And there's time where he may be able to do that. But right now, he's not fully capable of being able to do it consistently. So it's on the coaches to figure out how to get him to play at that high level. When you look at his numbers, not impressive. 53.9% completion rate. He has 729 yards, but 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio and only a 78.9 passer rating. What it tells you is you have a talented quarterback who's maddeningly inconsistent. And when you cross-reference the stats with the film, you see someone who misses far too many layups to be a guy that we're talking about being a fringe top 15, top 10 quarterback at the position. It's just not, it doesn't jibe with what the salary is going to be. And so there's a lot of frustration around. And I'm sure number 16 is hearing the noise. How can you not hear the noise when we have a little trusty device here that has X and Instagram and Facebook and everything else where everyone can weigh in their opinion on how a player is playing or anything else. So he feels that pressure, and he plays like someone who feels that pressure because it doesn't appear that there's a lot of fun being had by Trevor Lawrence when he's between the lines. And yes, as coaches, we want guys to have a level of focus and concentration and those things. But what we don't want is our best players playing tight or afraid to make mistakes. I get a sense that Trevor is trying to be so perfect that it comes off as him being reluctant to really go for it. Best quarterbacks that I've ever seen, I've ever been around, they just go for it, man. They try and fit the ball in the tight windows. They understand when to do it. They learn from the lessons on the practice field. They just get better and better over time. And I'm talking about like the greats that are gold jacket guys. Jim Kelly was like that. Brett Favre was like that. I mean, we've seen it over and over again. Like those guys are great because they didn't care. They would toe the line. And then once they knew what the line was, they didn't violate that. What we need Trevor to do is to have more fun being aggressive like that. Because I don't see a guy that's having a lot of fun on the field. And I love it because I'm competitive and I understand this statement that I'm about to utter. The fun is in the winning. It is in the winning. But for a player like Trevor, if I was beside Trevor and I were teammates, I would literally sit down beside Trevor and my little Beats boombox in the locker room behind me. I literally would play Eminem Lose Yourself because I feel like Trevor needs to lose himself in the joy of playing the game. Sometimes when you sign that big contract and so many people talk about the money and the money's significant and you obviously want to sign a deal because it does set your family up, gives you the insurance that you want, allows you to kind of breathe easy, knowing that you've taken care of the family with the bag. But with that comes a guilt that most players experience. And that guilt can kind of take you down a different kind of path mentally in terms of you're worried about having to prove that you're worthy of the money all the time as opposed to just playing. And for me, I just want to see Trevor play. Trevor's been too good for too long, high school, college, to not be able to be a really good player in the pros. And so it's on him wanting to dig down internally to figure out, man, how can I just kind of find my swag back as a player, as a pro? How can I put all of the stuff on the outside? How can I put that to the side and just focus on, man, let me just go play and have fun and do the things that I did as a high schooler that made me really fall in love with the game. That's what I would encourage him. If we were to sit down and we had a conversation, I was like, dude, just have fun, man. Just let it rip, let it go. Don't worry about making mistakes. Don't worry about turning the ball over. Just go for it. I made this analogy and I talked about it on other platforms where when I look at Trevor, it reminds me a lot of Top Gun. And Top Gun was one of my favorite movies coming up. And one of the reasons why is because I could identify with Maverick because it felt like Maverick was just kind of like, I would say the loose cannon that kind of went on his own and did his own thing. And he really was daring and kind of cocky and flamboyant, but like it worked for him. But there was the other character who was kind of the anti-Maverick, and that was Ice, and that was Val Kilmer. And he was like, man, everything needed a lineup, needed to be perfect before he would really take the shot. Trevor has some of that in his game because I feel like he's a perfectionist who wants to be perfect. He wants to be great. And sometimes you can want it so much that you're scared to make mistakes. I want him to make those mistakes because I want him to toe the line and I want him to let it go. And I want his natural talent to shine. And in being aggressive, even ultra aggressive, he'll find that rhythm that we need to elevate this offense. Because I'm going to be honest about this team and I'll be honest about the personnel. I like the personnel. I like the playmakers that they have around the quarterback. Love Christian Kirk, known him since high school, watched him grow and develop. He's a stud. He is terrific in the role that he's asked to play with the Jaguars. The talent for Brian Thomas Jr. stands out. You see it pop. He is already, I would say, the future number one receiver in Jacksonville. I thought it would maybe take a year or two before he got that role. He's going to grab that crown early, where he becomes the must-get guy. The gotta-have-it plays are going to go to number 7 because he's that good. 17 has been hurt, hasn't been around, hasn't been able to give them kind of the security blanket over the middle of the field, but he is coming back. And when he comes back, that trio is going to be a problem as they settle in and kind of own their roles. And I'm going to include Gabe Davis in that. because Gabe Davis certainly has a role where the three guys on the field, the three wide receivers on the field, 0, 13, and 7, they all are really good pieces. 0 and 7 are more of your vertical threat guys. 13 is the chain mover. 17 is the security blanket that makes the quarterback feel comfortable. In those respective roles, they all can shine in those roles. But the quarterback has to play at a level to elevate them as opposed to them elevating him. When we think about Trevor and we think about his game, not necessarily like him being labeled a generational talent, but being a high-end playmaker, high-end players elevate the play of those around him. We need him to elevate his play so that Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, Brian Thomas Jr., and Gabe Davis can be at their best, better than they've ever been throughout their careers. But it takes the quarterback being right to be able to do that. To get Trevor right, if I could now move from, look, I've been in the locker room talking to Trevor, like, hey, Trevor, here's what you need to do. If I could move down the thing and just kind of walk down the hall, I'm walking down the hall to Press Taylor's office. I'll be like, hey, coach, you ever ask me what I think and my thoughts on how we can get the young quarterback going? Here's what I would say. Hey, man, let's keep it simple. Let's play the hits. So like when you think about like your favorite radio station, right? If you listen on radio all day, you'll keep hearing them play the same songs over and over and over again in rotation. And some people are like, man, I'm so tired of hearing this song. But from a radio station standpoint, the reason why they play those popular songs is because when I get in the car and I'm only in the car for 20 minutes, I want to hear the hits. I want to hear the best songs. So if I am the Jaguars and I want to get number 16 up and going and I want to see him playing at his best, I'm going to ask Trevor, hey, man, what are your favorite plays? What are the things that you do well? And I'm going to say, hey, you only get to pick 5. What are 5 concepts that you know better than any other concepts that we've shown you throughout your time in Jacksonville in our playbook? And I'm going to take those 5 concepts and I'm going to run them over and over and over again. Now, I may motion and shift or whatever, but guess what? We're going to run the same concepts over and over again. If I could weigh in on what I think those concepts are for Trevor, like what works for him, I would go back to the days of Clemson. I would go back to 2022 when I think he had his most success. And I would tell you in order, here's what I would want to see if I was calling the game for 16. Screens, quick screens out to the wide receiver, get it out to Kirk, get it out to Gabe Davis, get it out to BTJ, let them catch it and make it the play happen. Trevor did that a ton at Clemson. You think about that all-star cast of wideouts that he had at Clemson that just overwhelmed everybody. Man, the bubble screen game was a big part of that. So, we're going to screen people to death if we get off coverage, whatever. We're going to make sure we get some layups. So my guy, 1, begins to string together some completions. 2, he begins to get some cheap yards from guys that are outstanding on the perimeter in terms of yak yards. And 3, we begin to have a rhythm because now we're moving the chains. Second part we're going to do is, we saw this early in the game against the Texans. Quick game to death. If you give us free access, if you're playing off, if you're not nose to nose, we're going to quick you to death. Every 3 or 4 plays, we're going to fire something out that's a quick pass. Hitch, slant, quick out, little option route from the slot. I want something where Trevor doesn't even have to think about the coverage. It's such a simple read. Okay, X is on the backside. The guy's playing off. Bang, here we go. Give me a hitch. Give me a smoke. Give me something. I can just get it into his hands. Not only so I can get him going, but now all of a sudden I'm starting to see 8 straight completions. I'm beginning to feel like I'm hot. I'm a basketball player that's hit a couple layups, and now the basket gets bigger. So we want to play the hits. The other concept that I Bleav is essential to helping Trevor get back on track, crossing routes, shallow crosses, mesh concepts where you have a mesh coming in at 5 yards, a mesh over coming in at 6 yards, and then you have some kind of in breaking route sitting right over top of those crossers at right 12 to 15 yards. The reason why those routes are good is because they're effective versus man or zone. Man, they keep it running. Zone, they get to a point. Opposite tackles, they sit down. The guy that's running the middle route, he sits down right over top of the ball. And so now we have a triangle. So for the quarterback, all of the movement, but everything is a triangle read right over the ball. My eyes don't have to go from left to right, right to left. It all opens up right there so I can be aggressive with my decision making and fire the ball right into my playmaker. Those shallow crossers were huge in 2022. We saw the likes of Zay Jones. We saw Marvin Jones, we saw Christian Kirk killing folks on those. Man, we're going to bring that back. We can get it right back in the mix. We're going to have Trevor get on track by playing the hits. The other thing that will help him get on track is not only about the quarterback getting off, it's about getting the playmakers off so they feel good. So in doing those things, screens, quicks, crossers, I'm going to make sure that my call sheet has plays designed to get the ball to 13, Christian Kirk. I would say right now, the number one receiver because he's a chain mover, reliable, dependable, consistent. He gets it. Brian Thomas Jr., the best wide receiver in the group, the most explosive wide receiver in the group. He is going to get plenty of targets because we've seen when he touches the ball, the magic happens. He's not quite at the top of the pecking order, but he's right there. We're going to make sure that 13 and 7 get the ball. Finally, 17, Evan Ingram's going to get the ball because I trust him so much. If I'm Trevor, I want to make sure that he is engaged. He gets a ton of balls. He may only average 8-9 yards a catch, but it's the security blanket part that I want from Evan Ingram to help Trevor get back on track. And so that's why I would employ those things. And that's why I would make sure 13, 7, 17, they're the only ones getting the ball. Those other guys, Gabe Davis, will find you. Those plays organically happen. But man, if I could prioritize it, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr., Evan Ingram, they're going to get it in whatever order to make sure it's there. Offensive line, because before we can talk about passing and letting them throw it, we got to make sure that we get the offensive line right. Not only to keep Trevor protected, because it's important for him to be able to get the ball out of his hands in a clean pocket so he can have confidence to let it go. But we also got to be able to run the football to take some of the pressure off of Trevor. When I think about these guys, and I'm going to say this, they got better last week against the Texans. Cam Robinson, Cam Robinson, then Anton Harrison, and Brandon Sheriff played better. Brandon Sheriff had some struggles in key moments, but overall, the offensive line play was better because he wasn't running from his life in the pocket. And when you're running from your life, you just have a tough time getting to rhythm. The offensive line has to continue to play well, not only pass protection, but running the football. Really encouraged. Last game, he had over 158, 159 rushing yards. Ooh, you do that on a weekly basis, you're going to be able to control the game and dictate the terms to the defense. All of that stuff is right. I would say this, you have to make a decision. Who's the better running back? Is it Tank Bigsby or is it Travis Etienne? Whatever it is, however you decide it, either we splitting the load or eventually we're going to lean into one of those guys taking over the number one duties. I think it's still good enough to split the load, share the responsibilities, but let's try and get those shared carries, touches. Can we get them in the, I don't know, like 30 range where we're getting guys to have some kind of combination where they're getting 30 touches on the game. So we're feeding it to the running backs, whether on runs or short throws, to make sure they're engaged. And they're also potentially creating the big play that we need. So offensively, to me, it's keeping it simple, playing the hits, making sure the best players touch it over and over and over again so we can get the dub. When we come back, we're going to take a little break because we can talk about my hat. Look, I didn't want to put my hat on just because it's hot. I got matching features, but this is my little Melon hat. And what's so great about this hat is this is the Hydro collection, meaning that I can take this to the beach. I can lay on the beach. I can put my Melon hat on. I can make sure that my skin, my face is protected. I got my aviators on, so my eyes are protected. I got all this done, so I'm not getting wrinkles and all this because my hat is protecting me from those harsh sun rays. But I'm cool. I'm cool and kicking it. I'm doing all of that. It looks good. And so we're going to make sure that not only do I have my Melon hat, we can make sure that you get it. And so you can see it. Can you see my little logo? Oh, look at the logo right there. There you go. Here we go. So you got to go to melon.com, melin.com. Make sure you get that. Durable. The construction is solid. You can't do it. Look, it's unbreakable. It's unshakable. Make sure you have your Melon hat the next time you go out and venture out to the beach, water, while you're still hanging out. I know it's about to be fall. I know it's all in. It's about to, the weather's changing and all that, but we still going to have a little fun in the sun. We can make sure we do it with our Melon hat. So now let's talk about the defense. Defensively, man, I feel like we're right on track because one of the things that shows up to me when I look at the defense is Ryan Nielsen is doing a good job of playing with what he has. And playing with what he has means that, look, defense, for whatever reason, has been really hit with the injury bug. And the crazy thing about the injury bug has hit us before we even started playing games. We're not even getting our guys on the field, and they've been able to sit out. We knew Dewey was going to be out for a minute. Tyson Campbell plays a half and goes and sits down. Darnell Savage, we can't get him consistently into the lineup. You look last week for your Luacan was not available. Devin Lloyd was a late scratch. We just haven't had enough of I would say, our A plus players playing. So, I mean, look, there's a good and a bad to that. The bad is we haven't had our stars or our best players play. The good is a lot of young guys that are playing and really kind of, I would say, carving out roles for themselves down the line. One of my favorites this year, and I would say this, man, Buster Brown, Monterey Buster Brown has been terrific. Stepped in for Tyson Campbell, didn't blink. You know, it's funny because last year you go back to that Thursday night game where he had to play, was thrust into action. He played well, but he has taken his game up a notch. I think it's very obvious. I think it's very apparent when you watch him. He not only has more confidence, but his talent and technique are working together, and he is crushing it because of that. I mean, one of the more fundamentally sound players that we have on the squad is showing up because he's playing well. Love the progress that we've seen from him. Another young player who finally got his opportunity to play, Devin Lloyd, been a late scratch. Ventura Miller went on the field. And I'm going to tell you, because I said this behind the scenes, my man was talking and barking and leading and doing all the stuff that you love to see a Mike linebacker do. Sideline to sideline, menace all over the field. Look, man, if he puts another performance like that on tape, it's going to be hard to pull him off the field. And I'm saying that full well knowing you got a big price, high price free agent that you pulled over and for you who's also signed an extension. But then you also got a former first-round pick in Devin Lloyd who you're expecting big things from. I'll say this. If we get to a point where we talk about best players play, if this was like look, high school where the head coach has really definitive say in terms of who playing, this dude has outplayed some of the others at the position. If he continues to stack another day like he stacked last week, the position going to be his because he's too good. He's too physical, too violent, and he's shown the leadership skills that you need. Very vocal leader, very feisty leader, has a little edge to him that I love and adore. Like he's someone to watch. So keep an eye on Ventura and Miller. The other player, we're talking about Jerry Jones, young corner, third-round pick, playing in the nickel, occasionally playing outside. Look, he's holding his own, and there have been some tough matchups for all of these young guys, this young secondary, but they've done a really good job of keeping the ball in front, playing well, mixing it up, giving the offense an opportunity to win the game. Even though it hasn't done that defensively, they've been pretty good. When we look at the numbers, yeah, there are going to be some issues. Rushing yards per game, they were within the top 10, 107.3. That's fine. 5 sacks and 0 takeaways, that's the area of concern. The area of concern is due to the lack of pressure on the quarterback, means that there haven't been a lot of disruptive play opportunities. He's throwing on rhythm on time. That means the ball is probably going to the target. I mean, we're not able to get the ball out or get off the field. That's an issue. 0 defensive takeaways. It's a problem because this game is routinely decided by who the winner of the turnover margin. And the Jaguars are just working a deficit because they just can't turn the ball over. Now, one of the reasons why you can't turn the ball over is because your pass rush is inconsistent. You can't get people backed up on early downs by stopping a run. And then when you do get them backed up, you give the quarterback too much time to pick apart the secondary because the rush is not in his face. It has to be more than a one-man show when it comes to pass rushing. It can't just be Josh Hines, Allen doing all the pass rushing. It has to be others to show up to the party. Trayvon Walker last year had 10.5 sacks, and you applaud him for that, but he has to be more consistent, more persistent, and a bigger factor when it comes to the pass rush. But it's not even those guys on the edges. Like on the interior line, man, Devon Hamilton, Ward Robinson Harris, they got to show up and be threats on the inside over and over and over again. Because if they do that, then you can get some one-on-ones on the outside where, boom, boom, the skills tip towards the Jags being able to do it. But it takes the interior 3 being able to slow them down to force their hand and kind of get them out of the situation. So that's been a huge problem. I would say Nielsen has been really good. Ryan Nielsen, defense coordinator. He's been good because he's adaptable and he's simple. The adaptability allows him to change and make wholesale changes in the second half based on, hey, man, look, we thought we were going to be able to play more. Man, we got to play zone. Okay, let's get it. And it's the foresight to be able to do it, but also to have the corrections in place and to know here's where we're going to next if we can't get it resolved. The same thing, and I've seen the same thing, heard the same thing when it comes to dealing with some of the other stuff that opponents would do. His ability to quickly shift and adjust to take away and neutralize what the opponent does, to me, that's good coaching. And that's what the great coaches have, is the ability to adapt, adjust, and figure it out. He can figure it out, and he's done a really good job thus far. Got to say that, some of the disappointing stuff in terms of like the lack of sack, the lack of disruptive plays, the lack of splash that we're seeing from the unit. Yeah, that has you kind of feeling down about some of the things. But I'm telling you, the defense is playing well enough to win. The burden is on the offense to step their games up. If the offense steps up, if the offense gives us what we need when it comes to points per game, dominant possessions, controlling the clock, then you win more games. It's a matter of being able to kind of get it done. I had an opportunity a couple years ago, to go to West Point, see Jeff Monken and the Black Knights kind of go about their thing. And it's funny because Army, who's 4-0 right now, got a big game against Tulsa. Army would talk about the three things that you have to have. You got to have the effort. You got to have the toughness, physical and mental. But finally, you got to have the execution. When I look at the Jags, I would say the effort is there. No question, the effort. They're playing hard. They work hard. They prepare hard. You've heard Doug said. You've heard the players talk about all the things they've done in terms of getting ready. So the effort is there. The toughness is there in my mind. Not consistently. It's there and it lies within each of them, but it's not there consistently because physical toughness shows up on 3rd and 4th and 1. You got to be able to blow people off the ball. You got to be able to convert those things and do it. The mental toughness part, though, which impacts the physical, being able to handle adversity, particularly at the outset of games. If the game starts off poorly, do you have enough poise and confidence to read yourself back in and get yourself on track? If you do that, then you feel great about your toughness and your ability to handle these tough tasks in terms of turning around a team. Toughness is essential. You got to have that physically, dominate the game the way that you want to play it, mentally to bounce back and handle any of the adversity that comes your way while staying focused on the task at hand. The last part, and maybe the most important part, which has really been the albatross around the Jags' neck, has been the execution. No matter how much we practice, no matter how much time you put into the preparation part of it, watching tape and talking through it and those things, at the end of the day, it comes down to execution. Executing what you're asked to do, when you're asked to do it, how you're asked to get it done over and over and over again. And when you have execution problems like this team is having, it requires you to get more reps on fewer concepts to make sure that you have it mastered so you can flourish. I'm going to do these same things over and over and over and over and over again to improve. I may add a wrinkle, I may add a motion, I may add a shift, but we're going to get back to who we are and what we are. And we're going to do it right away and lean into what that is. Effort, toughness, execution, 3rd and short situations, red zone situations, being able to get 7s instead of settling for 3s. Those are execution issues. Yeah, the physicality and toughness may be part, but execution. Can we get it done when we know this is a play that could win the game? Can we do it? Can we execute it? We haven't seen this team execute at a high level yet. Defensively, it's the same thing. Effort, running to the ball. We talked about Ryan Nielsen, talked about, hey, we're going to run to the ball. We're going to make it happen because we're flowing fast. We're filling. We're doing all these things. But the only way to have fun is we got to punch out the ball and knock the ball out. Do we have the physicality and toughness? I would say that this team has become a tougher defense just based on the way they practice, the way they are, the demands. All of those things are good. So tough enough. Mentally, they've shown more toughness when back into the wall. They've been able to get stops or whatever. So I don't question any of that. Only thing you can question is the execution. When you think about some of the big plays that have victimized this team the first 4 games of the season, it's the lack of execution. It's not being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there, doing it the way that it is supposed to be done. When you clean those things up, then you begin to get the consistent performance that you want. Then you begin to see the wins in the win column. And then you look up and you found yourself back into a pivotal playoff race, one that you want to get into. So before we go, let me send a little shout out to my new partner, Cherry Bundy. Cherry Bundy is everything that you want when it comes to recovery. Make sure we can see it. We can see it. Yeah, boom. It's everything that you want when it comes to recovering. This is a little tart cherry juice. So many benefits to drinking the cherry juice. It gives you an opportunity, one, to kind of deal with the inflammation. It reduces the soreness, increases your recovery, helps improve your sleep, supports your immunity, gets you up and going. You know, as a former NFLer, I love this. Look, it's used by nearly 500 collegiate and professional sports teams, including 10 of the last 11 Super Bowl champs and 66 of the 67 Power 4 conference football teams are using Cherry Bundy. Look, I'm not playing anymore, but every now and then when I overexert myself, when I'm doing a little yoga and I get a little tight, little sore, pop this. I'm right back in and I feel good. I mean, I still feel like the old guy, but I feel better. I feel better about myself because I took a little Cherry Bundy. So make sure we get up on that. Make sure you also rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you look at all the cool stuff that we have popping at the Bleav Network. Check us out on Fubo. Check us out on YouTube. Continue to build the community. I know we got off to a slow start, but look, the bandwagon will come back. Got to get more people on the bandwagon. Got to get more people spewing this positivity instead of being negative. Don't do it alone. Tell a friend to join us here on the Bleav in Jags podcast. Until Friday, when we shout out Coach Coughlin, I'm Bucky Brooks. We'll see you soon.